I hope I'm doing this right. I haven't done this sort of live stream thing before, so hey, thanks for tuning in. This is the hopefully the first of many. Hopefully it won't be terrible. Truthfully, I don't really know what I'm doing, but that's the idea. So yeah, my name is Dave. I'm a composer person. And the purpose of this today is I'm working on this larger form project as part of my DMA. I'm working on a symphonic piece for Wind Ensemble, and I thought it'd be kind of interesting to kind of document how I'm writing this thing, just so I know what I can do in future large ensemble projects. And for those of you who are out there who are interested in writing, large form projects and maybe don't really know where to start, or just need some ideas or just some ambient noise in the background to work with. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to kind of talk through some of the ideas of some of the kind of inspiration and lore and just influences that I have walking into this piece. And then the intention is to write for a little while, maybe like 10, 15 minutes, something like that, and work on the introduction and just kind of talk my way through it. I realized in the setting up of this that I'm having a little bit of a problem getting the playback to come through clearly. So hopefully I'll get that resolved in a future thing. But I'll be able to, if you're interested at all in what the final thing today looks like, I can post that at a different time. Just leave me a comment and I'll be happy to get that to you. So yeah, let's talk about this piece called Stellar Echoes. So this is a symphonic work for wind ensemble. So symphonic meaning of a symphony, which is kind of like a misnomer, right? It's kind of a funny thing when we think of symphony. Oftentimes we think about the orchestra. The orchestra is the Boston Symphony Orchestra, the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra, whatever. And what does that really mean? Well, the symphony, as I'm thinking about it here, is really actually a form of music. It was actually considered in its time the highest form of instrumental music. It's at the peak, at the top of the cultural hierarchy of instrumental music, and it's always been kind of a foundational thing for me. It's kind of funny when I was building up to work on this. I didn't realize, like, I'd always thought, I'll do some kind of opera or something like that, something that's really different. But it kind of dawned on me that actually, I've been so inspired and so impacted by these symphonic pieces that I've watched that actually that should be what I do. That's going to be the thing. Tackling the symphonic form in the 21st century, which is kind of wild. It's kind of a weird thing. There are still plenty of symphonies that are written today, but as you can imagine, it's different than when Beethoven and Brahms and people like that were around and doing their thing. So it's kind of funny. An interesting thing. So here's kind of what I'm kind of coming from with this. The instrumentation, I wanted to do something very challenging. I wanted to do something that was completely outside of what I had done before in scope. I've been fortunate to do a couple of orchestral pieces, but I haven't really been able to do anything. I've really only worked with one ensemble, I think, twice before, and I wanted to do something quite large. So I took the instrumentation from David Maslenka's Fourth Symphony. So if you're a Maslenka person, this is it's kind of a reference to that. I'm not really intending to write in his style or anything like that, but really just taking that mammoth-sized ensemble from the Fourth Symphony and use it. The only thing I'm not going to take with me is the organ. I'm good. I'm going to pass on the organ there. So yeah, this is a large complement of instruments, right? Four flutes overall, three oboes. We have six clarinet parts, four saxophones, three bassoons, four horns, four types of trumpets, four trombones, four versions of the tuba, counting the euphonium, which that's crazy to me. I don't really know what to do with that yet. And then of course double bass, piano, harp, timpani, and percussion. In that, so this is going to be a very different thing. I'm so used to having the string section, but this is I've got plenty to work with here, so it's going to be a really good challenge as we go into this. Okay, so some lore and some influence with this. All right, so you'll notice I've got three pictures here of three kind of artists that really kind of inspire me and how I'm thinking about this particular piece. So the first is going to be actually over here. Is gentleman is David Mitchell. Now, you might be confused because he's, not a composer. David Mitchell is an author. He's a writer of, he's probably most famous for Cloud Atlas, which is what a lot of people, know him from. And I think that's very interesting. He's very inspiring to me as a composer because I love the structure of how he takes his stories and puts them in kind of a particular sort of way. Not all of them, of course, but kind of the famous ones like Cloud Atlas and Bone Clocks, especially. So I'm really very much referencing that and kind of taking that approach to structure, which I'm going to talk about in a minute here. And then, of course, you have Sibelius in the middle. Sibelius is like one of my most important composer people. I'm actively working on some stuff, some references to Sibelius in this particular piece kind of throughout. He's another very structural person that I'm interested in learning from and incorporating into this piece as we go along. And then the third is going to be Gustav Mahler, who of course is the one of the greatest symphonic composers. Many would argue probably the greatest. I don't know if I completely agree with that, but that's he's certainly up there and is certainly a very admirable person to learn from. And especially, I love the way he has the structure of his first symphony. It's actually something I'm very much trying to learn from and work on here as I'm setting out in this particular piece. So these are kind of my like main influences, my main sort of things that I'm thinking about, that I'm when I'm not actively writing, these are crossing my mind. I'm listening to them and reading them and just kind of engaging with it and seeing how they connect to this particular piece. And again, part of this is not knowing. I'm at the very beginning stages of this thing, and there's still going to be more. So as I go along, I might find more things to talk about and more things to be connecting. But these three seem very central to me as it stands right now. Now, one of the things in terms of the structure that I really love, that I really admire about this, is the idea of the arch form, or you can also argue it's kind of like a circular sort of form. So I've got a picture here of like kind of like a natural arch occurring. I think that's somewhere out in like Utah or like something like that out west. And then of course we have like a Roman arch here. I love these ideas of the sort of the circular motion of having that apex or like a center that is really something that we go to. And this is actually a very popular way of telling stories and sometimes even in music as well. So like for instance, like some of my favorite works of art that I think that do a really great job with this type of arch form are actually a couple of books and a piece of music. So for instance, like Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell has this sort of structure to it where the very first chapter of it is set in one time, and the very last chapter of it is set in that same time period. And so, it's set in it has a sort of this colonial, what is it, like early 1800s sort of setting, and then it goes forward in time. And so actually the first and seventh chapters in one place, and then the second and sixth have the same characters. But there's this extra story that happens in the middle, and every layer you go up, they have some kind of connection. They're circular that way. It's kind of the same thing with Harry Potter, which kind of, it's like, whatever with Harry Potter, the idea of the circular storytelling. Like I think of a really good example of this is the fourth book is kind of the centerpiece. It's the core. It's where everything changes, where, Voldemort comes back and the story is forever changed there. So that's kind of like the apex of the story. And then there are circular motions outside of it. Sirius enters in the third book, and then he dies in the fifth book. There's the whole Horcrux and the book, the Voldemort diary and the Chamber of Secrets. Then there's the potions book that Harry learns from, and there's Ginny becomes a main character here, and she was a main character in this one, not really relevant in the others. And there's all these different like circular ways of doing it. It's kind of the same thing with Holst. The way that he structures his piece. I'm going to do a video on that at some point because I think that's like kind of like an underrepresented thing in his writing. A lot of people know that there's actually a clear structure between how it is, where Jupiter is kind of the apex, is kind of the main movement of the whole piece. It's building towards that, and then Mars, for example, is the very first movement. It features this 5/4, very rhythmic, ostinato driven piece, and it's paired with Neptune at the end, which is also in 5/4, but it's like anti-groove, and it's kind of like it's like a mirror opposite of Mars. And then kind of the same sort of thing with the other movements as well. As you go along this, there's kind of circles on top of circles. So that's something that I'm very interested in. So part of this process for me is starting at the beginning and having a real understanding of how this is going to work towards the end. Hello. Okay. So my cat's been sleeping all day, and of course she decides to come in. Okay. No. Okay. Of course, she comes in when I'm doing this. So anyway, okay. Sorry, got a little lost there. All right, so that's kind of the idea. So what I want to do today is really focus on something at the very beginning of it, with the understanding that I'm going to take this material and I'm going to use it throughout the piece. I'm going to be layering in those circles as I go. But right now, I just need to start with the one thing. So this is kind of like a rough idea of what I'm looking at right now. Again, this is today. This is like one of the first days that I'm like actively working on this piece and actually getting really into the weeds with writing it. But this idea of, this part of this first movement, having an intimate relationship with stuff that's going to happen at the very end of the piece, of the end of the third movement. And this is going to be a 3-movement structure for me. I know most symphonies are actually, well, I say most, but back in the day, a lot of symphonies were in 4 movements, right? You think of your standard like, sonata allegro, and then you have your fantasia, some type of slower movement that's usually more vocal in quality, and then you have a type of scherzo as your third movement, and then the final movement is just a finale, and its whole purpose is to usually be fast. It's usually in the sonata form, and it usually it has to confirm the key. So if you're writing in the key of G minor, then you have to confirm that key again, just like you did in the first movement. Now, obviously, when I'm writing a symphony here today in the 21st century, I'm not really worried about those particular things. I do think I'm going to reference them. I think that they're interesting. But for example, I'm only doing the 3 movements, and the movement for me that's going to be cut is the slow, the fantasia, the andante. I'm actually going to keep the scherzo. The scherzo is actually kind of something in the middle. Now, I say scherzo. I don't. Is it actually going to be a scherzo? Is it going to do all this stuff? No, probably not. It's going to be informed by the things that are going on in my life and all of that. And it's not going to be exactly true to the spirit of a 19th century scherzo, and nor should it, because I'm not writing in the 19th century. I'm writing in the 21st century. So that's kind of the idea for what I want to work on with this particular project. So what I'm going to do now, and so we've been about like 12 minutes in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the beginning of this thing. You'll notice in the Sibelius file, once I share it here, that I do have a little bit of things written already, but I haven't really ironed out and found the beginning. So what I want to do is I want to go through and have a very clear idea of where does my theme come in, and then I can build stuff around it. So this very first layer that I'm going to do, I'm not really worried about the orchestration just yet. That will come with time. Right now, I have to find that sort of first layer, that ground layer of what's going on here. So let's do the thing. Let's dive in here. Okay, so let me share ye old screen. Okay, you guys should be able to see Sibelius now. Okay, great. Now I can't see you, but that's okay. All right. So the very beginning of this, the 3/4 meter is important to this particular piece. It's something I'm going to be playing with. Each movement is going to be in some type of 3/4, at least in the very beginning of it. So starting here, what I want, the imagery that I'm thinking about, the reason it's called stellar echoes is because when you look into the sky, right, or you look at the sky at night and you see all the stars, you're actually looking into the past, right? And it's like a little sciencey thing, right? The speed of light that is traveling towards us, like we're actually looking into the past. We're not actually seeing what's happening in the present. And I kind of see that as an analogy to works in the past. There's many great composers who say, what's the saying? I stand on the backs of giants. That sort of thing, or something like that. I could be butchering that saying, but that's kind of the idea. So I view this as kind of finding my place in this particular world. So using space and kind of looking out into the natural world like that as an analogy, I want to kind of create a very atmospheric beginning with this. So actually, before I introduce any material, I actually want to take a very deliberate amount of time and just start with sound. So the first thing I'm actually going to do, the very first thing, is just going to be the bass drum. And I actually want to give it plenty of time. I'm going to mark it as a solo. I find that to be a very important thing to do. If they're the only person, oh man, you got to let them know that. All right, so we're going to start with the tremolo with this, and I'm going to give this, I've got quarter, I think it's quarter equals 60, that's what I have decided on. Yeah, something like that. I may change that. Everything that I'm saying here is going to be potentially subject to change as we go along, but what I want to get is that kind of first opening gesture, and I want to start with that well of sound. So the bass drum, and all right, so something like, think even something like, all right, so adding this, I can hear this for like maybe 4 bars, something like that. Again, and I might even actually mark these as a fermata. I'm still figuring that out as we go, but here we are. All right, so zooming in. All right, so what I want to get to is, let's say that measure 4 is where we start to have some thematic material here. I like the idea of 3. So this is our first kind of layer here. All right. Now with this, I am going to add in the timpani. Very, very quiet. Again, I want this all to be like super, super quiet. And going from there. All right, so we got that. And, as I go along, I remember I had this, I wanted to do, let's see, I want to keep the vibraphone, but I actually wanted to do, what was it? I was thinking about it the other day, and it like hit me like a truck. I was like, oh yeah, the Thunder Sheet. Actually, I don't know if they have a sound thing for that. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I said Thunder Sheet, but what I mean is the tam tam. Sorry, I'm saying the wrong thing. Okay, so the tam, we'll do that later. We'll fix that later. Okay, so tam I think is just really fantastic because I need this vibraphone hit for something that's going to happen later, and I need the cymbal hit for later. So this kind of like low trio of timpani, bass drum, and tam tam, man, there's a lot that you can do with that particular cohort. So yeah, let's have this go. All right, so actually, you know what? I say 4, but let's go ahead and do 5. I kind of like the idea of keeping it an uneven amount of spaces. So we're going to go, and I'm going to have them crescendo. Let's see. Let's have this. So if we're going to have a hit here, what is this? Okay, so I want kind of like a simple sort of thing to hit here. This is another, it should be about like a forte. I don't want it to be a straight block hit, so we are going to do a roll up. But I just want these simple things, because I'm actually going to layer this later on. If we go up here, okay, so sometimes what you have to do with these sort of things, especially this like woodwind technique thing that I'm going to do here, I'm going to label that later. I'm going to take some time to really like plan out the orchestration here. Right now, that's not so important. Right now, I kind of need to get that first draft, that first layer. I need to have like the story beats of, okay, what's going to happen and where do we get there? So starting with this bass drum hit, right, we do want to continue rolling here, but this is the first part where we maybe will start to calm down a little bit. So I'm going to call this just mezzo forte. I don't want to give it away too quickly. I don't want that to be gone so fast. But having like a crescendo like this. All right, so something like that, and then we're going to have like a very quick come back down. All right. So again, it's very easy to, especially the percussion, at least for me, because I'm not a very great percussion writer. I'm kind of, I think it's easily the weakest area for me. But something I do try and really be cognizant of is how it could be. It's a very powerful section. It's so powerful with what it can do. So making sure that if you have a hit here, like I've got this piano thing that and woodwind thing that I'm going to do here starting in measure 6, but making sure that, okay, yes, I've had the hit, but then let's immediately get out of the way. I don't want to lose the rumble, but really want to make sure that it's clear that they need to get out of the way. It's so easy. I see that a lot, especially with like, especially when I was first starting out. Like I didn't have I didn't have like a real appreciation for that. I'd write all these brass things, and I would just write forte or fortissimo or whatever, and they would just stay that that held sustain. But actually making sure that they back off and get out of the way of what's most important is super important part of the process. Okay, so actually, you know what? I have this. Yeah, I'm just gonna stay on D here. So it's kind of like a D pedal, and it's just sound. We're just doing sound. We're not worried about. We just want this low rumble that's happening here. Actually, let's do the same thing. So, now I'm not gonna mark the timpani up as much. I think. because I want to save that. The bass drum is wider and more, just a bigger sound. But we just want something very simple. Very, very simple. All right. Tam Tam also extremely, extremely powerful sort of situation. Now I'm just gonna do the Tam Tam. We're gonna stay strong. And actually, we're not even gonna get that loud. I don't need it to be that much. And of course, we need to add the tremolo. I'm gonna use the marking LV. I'm gonna tell them to let vibrate. But that's the idea. I may actually want to add. May want to add this particular idea in. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, let's not get bogged down by that. So this opening gesture, I don't need to play it or anything like that. But we basically are just taking some time to just start with this low rumble that's going to grow, and I don't need it to be too terribly loud. I don't, because I want to save that. I mean, it's going to get loud and crazy and everything like that later on, but that's not what we need right now. We need just that motion. So I'm using the piano here at this little entrance here to have this little quartet of, well, not quartet, but like set of fifths that I have that I'm thinking of this way. Yes, they're technically stacked fourths, but whatever. The transposition of the fifth is kind of what I'm thinking about. And that's actually an important recurring idea that's going to come throughout. Each movement has some kind of start with a different number of stacked fifths in this. But okay, so this is kind of our first little idea that I'm going to have come in here. Now I want to have this go here. Have it repeat. Okay, so let's feel the timing of it. There we go. I actually don't hear any sound. I wonder. There we go. Okay. Right, and I said if you can't hear it, leave me a comment on the thing. I hopefully will have that resolved next time. It was something I was like trying to figure out as going along. This is my first stream, so whatever. This is the we're figuring out as we go along. But anyway, okay, but that feels like the right amount of time. That's the idea, and I can always go back and add that later. That's not the most important thing. I just want that kind of groundswell here. Now, what is important though is this idea of the theme coming in. I have a specific voice that I want to reference here. So I'm going to stop the share for just a second and talk about this theme for a hot second. The theme that I want to get into is actually something that's very much coming from from Sibelius specifically. So one of the things I really love about his music in particular is how he introduces themes. He's such an interesting composer with this sort of thing because he's so good at both presenting a theme in a very interesting way or in an unusual way, and he's also very good at hiding a theme and making something appear that is, seemingly unimportant, and then you realize later on, oh, this is the main thing, the whole gig. So think about his first symphony, for example. That's a very his very first symphony opens with this wacky sort of duet between solo clarinet and timpani. So not two that we see go together very often. Kind of weird, right? But what's interesting about this is that he opens this whole symphony. It's like a 2-minute, 1 or 2 minute thing of this statement of this theme, and it's just kind of there, and then the rest of the movement happens. And none of that material comes back at all in the first movement. It actually doesn't resurface until the final movement, when all of a sudden it appears, and it's, instead of the clarinet and the timpani, it's it's in the trombones and things like that. So I love this idea of having the importance of the theme appearing right at the very, very beginning. And I kind of want to pay homage to that by actually having an appearance of two themes at the beginning here. I want one to be kind of more outwardly aware, and that's going to be the voice that I'm going to show here is is the trombone. And that's kind of referenced to Sibelius' Seventh Symphony, which, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's got a really great one of the recurring motifs of it is this fantastic trombone solo. All the trombone people, like, it's like one of their best solos, one of the best things they get to do. It's part of this really gorgeous texture, and it's just this idea. It's this circular idea that it comes back, I think, 2 or 3 times throughout the piece, at least 2 that I can remember. And so I love that idea. So it kind of as an homage to that, and also partly because they're one of my committee members at UM. You have to, for if you're not in a doctorate program, you don't know this sort of thing or whatever. I didn't know this when I was walking into it. You have to have like a committee that looks over all of your stuff when you're doing your dissertation and everything like that. And so one of my committee members is the trombone professor at University of Miami. So I said, well, if you join my thing, I'll make sure to include a trombone solo. Kind of cheekily, but actually I love that. I would have done it anyway if it was a different person, but I'm lucky it's him. But anyway, so a trombone solo, and specifically the first time that I'm going to introduce this idea, I don't want to just give it away. I don't want to write, an epic trombone solo right out the gate. That's I'm not saving anything that's not subtle. So I'm actually going to have it use the harmon mute. That's going to be the main voice for it. So what I want to do is get an idea of like when this thing comes in, give it like a version of the melody. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be like the strict, classical era version of it. It just needs to be the thing that it is, which is a version of the theme that is developing and growing. So once I get this, then I can handle the orchestration. I can do all the different things around it because there's lots of stuff that I want to do with it that I don't. That I don't want to get bogged down in just yet. Like I don't want to be working on the third clarinet part when I haven't written my melody out yet. That's trying to keep that clear. So here we go. Let's share the screen. Coming back. Great. Okay. So coming back to this. So in this sort of idea, one of the things I want to do here is. This is in 4/4 actually. There's going to be kind of like an aleatoric thing that I do here, but I'm not worried about that. I am going to make a note of it though. I don't know if you ever used the note tool, but aleatoric. And that's going to be something I do in the clarinets. But we're not worried about that today. We're worried about that later. Okay, so this little sort of fermata situation, but I'm going to orchestrate that later. Okay, so to make this easier, sometimes I've found that like it can be kind of overwhelming when you're writing within the full score, which I do usually do. I do like writing in the full score. I think that works best for me. But there are times where it's kind of a pain. So taking the time to just make sure the voices that I really need are close by, and then going from that. So the other thing I do is, especially, I won't do this in the actual version, like when I give this to people when it's time to perform it and everything like that. But I am going to make a version of this where it is clear. Okay, this is a partial statement. Okay, something like that. Partial statement of the theme. Statment. Nothing like a partial statement. Okay, all right. So my melody is going to be, oh yes, it should clarify with harmon mute. All right. Now I believe what is the standard practice with the harmon mute is if I'm not going to do the whole have the stem sticking half out. I'm just going to have the stem in, but I don't need it removed. So if you just say that, I think that's the default for them, is that there's a little stem thing that makes the harmon mute like the coolest mute ever, and you can pull it out, or you can remove it, or you can have it sticking out, or you can just have it in. And if you don't say anything, the default is in. So that's what I want here. I want this. So my melody starts on a C sharp here. C sharp. Now we're going to make sure that it's marked loud. So I'm going to give it this because it is a harmon mute. And I have to, when I'm using the harmon mute, I have to make sure that I'm marking, like you have to, acknowledge that when you have the harmon mute, you have the option to have the wah thing either open or closed. So you have the closed notation was a little plus sign, and you have the open with the little circle. It's exactly the same sort of thing that you would do with like a stopped horn. It's exactly the same notation. The difference is that you have this extra option, which is to do the wah. So you can do the wah thing, which is a combination of like an articulated attack plus the opening of the hand, and it's such a fantastic sound. If you just listen to any great muted trombone jazz, you'll get exactly the idea of what I'm talking about here. So I don't want to start open. I want to start actually closed because I want to build to it. And I also need to clarify this is a solo, as I want the when wind players get these parts, having something that says solo on it, they're going to look at it, even if it's half notes. I know it sounds very silly, but if you really want them to look at something, you always put solo on it. They'll be paying attention to it. It's just kind of funny. Okay, so it starts on the major seventh, leaping down. So we want just kind of like a basic statement here. Oh, sorry. So more sound than I expected. Sorry. Don't mean to move the mic. Okay. So we're going kind of slow. So this is a partial statement, which means I'm just going to have it set on the... Sorry. It's the one thing I don't like about the keypad. So this is just kind of like a little motif. And every note that you have with the harmony mute, you should acknowledge it. So when I do this obviously for them is going to mean closed. And just to clarify, when I put both, I am going to put wah. And maybe there's some people in the audience who know better about that. That's what I've seen that has worked before. You just clarify for them that means wah, and then they understand that both means that, and you go on from there. Okay, so that's kind of like my first statement of this particular thing. So in answer to this, I don't want to be a boring composer. I don't want to just like give the whole theme away right off the bat. I want this kind of answer and response thing between the trombone and the piano idea. Something about having the first notes played by the piano, I think that's very kind of real and important. There's so many of us that write at the piano first. I know I've very much come up with many of my melodic ideas, many of my harmonic ideas coming from the piano. But so there's something about that's kind of like I don't know, it feels like it's a behind the scenes sort of thing. I don't know, and maybe not actually, but that's kind of how I'm thinking of it, which is kind of fun. Okay, so we have this idea coming out here, and this is the main section of it. What we want then is we're going to switch to 4/4, because I have this little sort of idea of the theme being hidden here. All right, so let's see. I want to get this right. So, actually, let's start on the offbeat. Okay. Having the same here. Let's see, I forget what I had in my mind here. Oh, yes. I have this idea of having in secret the secondary theme being kind of hidden in the inner voices of this. Now, this isn't just going to be piano. This is going to be like a lot of the twinkling sounds, so like the vibraphone and the harp and everything like that. But what I need to focus on right now is just getting the timing right. Is this the right spot? Does this feel the way that it needs to feel? actually going to restart that. So what I'm going to do now, as I'm going along, I kind of have limited access to my keyboard. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the little secondary theme. I'm introducing this here, but I'm actually going to hide it in the voice. But I'm not worried about exactly how I'm going to harmonize it. Again, this first layer is getting the timing right, getting the draft of what. It's kind of like a what's the word? I can't think of the word right now. Storyboard, just like in movies, like when you see like a storyboard, it's not exactly what's going to happen, it's not exactly what the audience is going to see, but it gives you an idea of kind of the pacing where it's going to go. So that's really what I'm worried about, is this one through line. How are the melodies coming in, and then I'm going to go back and really orchestrate. Okay. Actually, you know what? It's not in 4/4. It's not in 4/4. It's still in. Yeah, no, this is not the idea. That's fine. It's just a hint. All right. Now this is the same sort of thing. I have this 4/4 idea spread out. And this is going to be more of these little echo things that I'm going to do with the flute, which I'm going to orchestrate later. And these little pushes. Okay, let's see if we can get this. How does this feel timing wise? Forte on that. It's very simple. There we go. And actually, you know what? As I'm doing that, this can go here. So I'm feeling it. I kind of want the, no, I don't want that there. I want the here. And we're going to delete that. Great. Okay, so that's the idea. Because I hear the la, la, bom, pee, and then having the next idea come in right in the middle of that. Beautiful. Okay, so that's the idea. Oh, I should go ahead and mark these fermata things. Okay, that's going to be the same idea here. Okay, great. Now, something I do like to do as I'm going through is, you know, yes, I'm having these main ideas, but it is important to have, like, when I can, it isn't always possible, it's not always recommended on this, but having all of the idea, not all of the idea, but the like a third thing happening. You usually try to have at least one or two ideas happening here. Just having, there's something magical about having the second thing working. Okay, so, and that's going to be this bass drum hit. And again, we're doing the same sort of thing. We're taking the same sound that we had before, and we're just building to it. Back down again. I want to be careful with the management of it. Step pianissimo. Let's have these all be tremolo. Actually, you know what would be better is to give us a break from it. All right. Okay. Give it like two things. I want this to feel very kind of glacial, and this will make a lot more sense when I'm able to add in other voices into this, so you can hear what's going on textually. Okay. Okay. Now that's the idea. There we go. Oh yeah, we can get rid of that. And this is kind of going to become this more aleatoric situation that comes in. So that's kind of like our partial statement. I find this helpful to mark it. Now we're going to have more of a full statement here. Okay, great. All right, so same sort of thing. It's going to start the same way. So let's see. Let's get the timing right. That's going to be the theme. So it's kind of like a little waltz sort of thing, which is kind of a, I don't know, maybe I'll play with that as we go along. I like the idea of it starting on the like a major seventh down. That's not an interval that we don't really like. It's not like one of those that we hear very often in like a sung melody. But there's something kind of weirdly like sort of like a lullaby to me about it. I don't know. I kept coming back to it as I was writing this. And let's see if we can get the timing of that. So there's a little extra. All right, so that's kind of like the first half of this. So we're going to mark this back to forte. All right, and we're going to give this the wow, wow. Yeah, I think a wah on each of these. I'll have this kind of slurred down. Wow, wow. Of course, the trombone's not really able to do those kind of slurs, but that's fine. Sometimes I find, especially with them, it is nice to give them kind of the idea or the gesture that you're going for with this. Even though they're not going to technically do a real slur, because that's not really what they do, knowing that it should feel that way as opposed to ya, pa, pee, pa, having more of like a more of like an articulated attack. Maybe not. Maybe it's nice for them to know that it should sound like that. Wow. So, and I'm going to leave this. I want to make sure that I'm clear with this. If you notice, if I left this way, okay, great. I only have the wah settled, but then what about the rest of it? I always want to make sure that I'm going to keep it open. There. Each of these will be wah. And I'm going to keep these open. And actually, this last bit of the phrase is going to be 4/4. Bum, bum. Yeah, I hear that as a. Oh no, sorry. I swear to God, I do. That's the one thing working with the mutes. I keep forgetting that I have to switch this thing back. Okay. La, da, la, da, da. So la da da dee Yeah, okay, so it's kind of the same thing but faster. But tied over. So turning these into eighth notes. We have the ninth there. Now it's kind of a wonky little solo, but that's okay. That's kind of the idea. This is a tie. Keep in mind that everything that we've done here on the timer, if we're going at quarter equals 6, this should be about it. We might make this a little more rubato, make this a little go faster, but this is kind of the idea. This is the most important thing. It's just having this theme set. Okay. Ya dum dee dum dee da bum bum. That's right. That's re. Okay, and that's some previous stuff that I don't need to do right now. Okay, great. All right. So this is kind of where I hear this part of the phrase ending. We can do that kind of elision here. Okay, so let's just make sure we've got all of the markings. Wah, wah. These first twos are wahs. Wah, wah. Yep. Thank you. Wah, 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 wah. Yeah, they're all that. Wah, 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 wah. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so this is, I say full statement. I'm going to put that in asterisk because it's not actually, it's just a more full statement. Not quite exactly the full melodic idea of what we're going on here, and that's okay. We've got a long way to go. Though I should have mentioned at the beginning, is the whole duration of the piece is going to be something like around 8 minutes each. So we're looking at around like a 24 minute thing with this. So that's why I'm not in a huge rush to go ahead and get all the ideas taken care of and get them out of the gate. All right, so this is a statement of this. I'll come back and melodically shape this as we go along, but let's get into this next part of the idea here. Okay, so similar to what we had before, this kind of like little chant thing that we had here. I want this to kind of return in the piano here. Again, I'm going to contextualize this later. Right now, we're just doing the rhythm. So it says. See. Okay, so I'm going to stop the screen. I think that we are going to call it a day here. And there we go, stop that. Okay, great. Okay, so that's kind of how I would do this first little bit. I actually went way over on this, didn't mean to go so long. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about this, is thinking about how I'm going to do that first theme and making sure that it's just in place before I start building all of these different ideas around. So let me know what you think of this. It's the first time doing this, so if it's a little weird, whatever, we're figuring it out. But thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next